Plenty of Detroit Pistons players must improve next season, but which three players are under the most pressure to show improvement and help the Pistons win games next season? We'll go through that in just a moment.
Passing lane, sky's a jam. Dynamite dunk and the crowd loves it.
Welcome back to Pistons Intellect. I'm your host, Jack Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack_Kelly_313. You can also follow us over on Instagram at Pistons_Intellect. And if you're feeling so kind, please hit that subscribe button. For today's show, I've been thinking recently about kind of the roster, the young core in particular, and how they all need to mesh in the upcoming season in order for this team to show improvement and to win more games. And got me thinking kind of about a fun way I could kind of discuss who I believe needs to improve and show signs of improvement in certain areas of their games next season, as well as which three players are kind of under the most pressure to kind of improve. So before I get to my top three players here, the way I've done this is I've ranked three players who I think need to show signs of improvement, combined with the fact will be under pressure from, I guess, the organization and the fan base, kind of all molded as one. So these are the three players I think, at least from my end, will be under the most pressure to improve and just help, whose improvement will be vital to this team winning more games next season. So the first player I wanted to get to here was a guy who was a fan favorite, who as a rookie, and then this past season, you either kind of love him, you're disappointed with aspects of his game, but there's so much potential there, and that's Jaylen Durant. Last season, as you can see here, the numbers, at least the basic box score numbers, are always off the charts. 14 points, 12 rebounds, 2.5 assists for a big man, 62% from the field. A lot of those are dunks and rebounds, putbacks, but they all count. He showed improved footwork and touch around the basket. His free throw shooting was, I think it was over 70%. So just a huge improvement there. And, you know, there's plenty to love with Jaylen Durant on the offensive end. And I think as a rookie, I was so impressed with him, his passing, just like the rebounding, that shouldn't be underestimated. Just how important that is. And he's already a top 5 rebounder in the league. And I think this season, as long as he's playing 26 minutes plus, I think Jaylen Durant's going to be a top 5 rebounder in the league. He's one of, if not the best offensive rebounder in the league. And he's just a physical specimen at only the age of 20 years old. But the reason he's here, and for those that have watched and tuned into the channel, or you're just a part of the daily Pistons content cycle, the reason Jaylen Durant is under pressure next season is because he needs to show improvement on the defensive end. This past season, how should I say it? In his first 2 seasons, Jaylen Durant has been a below average defender. But as a rookie, you know, you never expect it. It's pretty rare anyone comes in and has impact on defensive end. And I think as a rookie, we saw him blocking shots, particularly at the start of his rookie season, dealt with some ankle injuries. But I think last season, after like the first 2 weeks of the season, I think he played the first 3 or 4 games and then he missed some time. And it kind of felt like once he came back from that initial injury, he just was never the same defensively. And we can talk about block shots. We can talk about timing on rotations. But sometimes it was just the effort for me that kind of waned and was the most disappointing, because that kind of reminded me of Andre Drummond midway and towards the end of his tenure in Detroit, where he's got all the tools, elite rebounder, elite size and strength and athleticism for a big man, but just sometimes the motor lacked for Andre. And I saw signs of that in Jaylen Durant last season. particularly obviously in a season where they didn't win many games. Just sometimes his motor just lacked. And for a 20-year-old guy who has all the talent and physical gifts in the world, it was just disappointing because he's the guy who quarterbacks your defense. Like, I can live with missed rotations and missed block shots, but I can't live with a lack of effort. And that's just what I felt like I saw last season. And what makes it even more frustrating is his chemistry with Cade on the offensive end and his improvement on the offensive end overall as a finisher around the rim is so impressive. But if he can't play NBA level defense or starter level defense at the center position and at least be a little bit above average, it's hard to keep a center on the floor that can't shoot and can't defend at an average level. So I'm not saying he needs to get to, you know, top 15 defensive center in the league next season, but he needs to take some, I would say, a pretty decent stride in that direction, and just show improvement each month. Like, it's okay to have a down week or hit or two where he might go up against Nikola Jokic, Anthony Davis, another West. He might have a really rough couple of weeks with matchups with like some of the best big men in the league, Joel Embiid. But what I don't want to see is him just dominate backup bigs and the lesser starting centers in the league, and then just get absolutely dominated by equal or better opposition. I want to see him take it to those guys and really just show some strides. And overall, just protect the paint. The block shot numbers don't like scare me too much, even though they are kind of alarming. It's more how teams are scoring, how many points they're scoring in the paint when he's on the floor. What's their field goal percentage at the rim when he's on the floor? Sometimes I think Jaylen's a bit conservative with his fouls. And I hope JB Bickerstaff is able to kind of help him and the new coaching staff figure out a way defensively to find a better balance of being aggressive at blocking shots and also kind of figuring out when he needs to stay at home, get the rebound, or conserve his fouls. Because I think that's just as important as being in the right spot and that kind of thing. It all kind of goes hand in hand. So, because if Jaylen can't show strides defensively, I think Trajan Langdon already said rim protection was a major need for this team. He said rim protection and shooting were two of the major areas for improvement for this team that he was looking at. And they got Paul Reed, but he's more of an energy shot blocker. He's a bit of an undersized 5, but he kind of helps in that area, but they still don't have a true rim protector. Isaiah Stewart, is their best defender at the 5, and he's undersized. So they still haven't really found, they don't have on the roster a solid to good NBA level rim protector. So I would hope Jaylen Durant can show strides this season to being that, because if he doesn't, long term, I'm not sure what it looks like with him in Detroit. But that conversation I still think is a season away, but it's why I have him number 3 on the list here. Number 2 is Cade Cunningham. And unlike kind of Jaylen Durant, it's more so to do with the pressure that I think is going to come Cade's way if this team doesn't win 28 or let's say 26 plus games this season. I think the roster that's put around him, whilst I don't think is a playoff roster, I think this roster, with the shooting they've added, the veterans they've added, keeping a really good rim running big in Durant, adding another in Paul Reed, and also having a spacing big in Isaiah Stewart, I think Cade kind of has everything he needs to at least have this team competing on a consistent basis. And if this team doesn't win 26 to 30 games or more, I think there's a heap of pressure that's going to come his way, and I think it'll be deserved because he just signed a max deal. And I think this team, whilst going from 14 wins to 28 wins is a huge jump, and something I did a study on this last offseason. Like, teams who finish historically with the worst record only win normally the following season and like an extra 7 or 8 games. But I think last season was somewhat of an outlier, and I would hope that this team can get to 28 to 30 wins. And I think if they don't, Cade's going to be the number one guy because new coach, new front office, and they will cop heat. But I think Cade's the guy they're building this around. And if he can't get this roster, like touch wood, it stays healthy, to a respectable win-loss, I think he's going to cop a ton of heat, and I think it'll be from the fan base, national media, and just any media really. And I think it'll all be deserved, but I truly do think he will be able to get this team and just the new vibes around the team and everything. I just cannot see this team being the worst team in the league next season. Like I said that last season, I've said that before, but like there's no way they can be worse than Portland. Especially with Portland being in the West, like I just would like to think I don't want to have this conversation, but I had to put him number 2 on my list because yeah, I think a lot of people are confident he can get them trending in the right direction, but considering how the first 3 years of his careers are gone, I can see why some people might have some doubt. So he's number 2 on the list, but it's not because of any major area he needs to improve. He just needs to continue to increase that efficiency. You can see the numbers here, like 23, 4, 8 assists, basically, if you round up. Like they're elite numbers. It just needs to start winning games. And that's kind of a big deal, but I believe he can. But until he does, he'll remain high on the pressure index for me. The number 1 player I have under the most pressure is Jaden Ivey. And this is more in the vein similar to Jaylen Durant, where Ivey, it's more of a question of can he. I think what we found last season is that the version of Jaden Ivey that we saw last season, who plays off the ball alongside Cade, that can't find a rhythm without the ball and kind of struggles to play well off of Cade, that version of Jaden Ivey probably doesn't, like I feel fairly confident saying doesn't fit with Cade Cunningham long term. And the Pistons have clearly made a huge investment in Cade. And I think there's still plenty of questions to be answered about if Jaden and Cade can play together. But the version of Ivey we saw last season off ball alongside Cade, it didn't work. Like it didn't work. They had like one good game together where Ivey scored 30 and Cade scored 30 against a really struggling Nets team, which was a really nice game and a game I love watching. But apart from that, Jaden really struggled alongside Cade. And then more disappointingly, he kind of struggled in the last couple of weeks of the season when Cade was out, when he had the opportunity to start and be kind of the main guy. So I put some of it down to poor coaching with Monty Williams, but Jaden has to take some of that responsibility as well, because maybe he was dealing with something we don't know about, an injury or that kind of thing, but he just closed the season really poorly, which was pretty disappointing. So, but we need, like, if Jaden can't show this season he can share the floor with Cade and play alongside each other effectively, I think it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to keep him around long term and extend him in next off season or the season after. Now, I'm not saying you trade him trade deadline or next off season even, but to me, like, and this is why he's in my starting lineup for now. I just don't. I get the argument, but I don't see much value in just playing him like as a backup point guard. Like, I think you should be trying to still figure out while he's on the roster if he can play alongside Cade. And of course, you want to see them staggered, especially with the Pistons point guard situation. I think in my opinion, like I spoke on the last episode, you put Cade and Jaden in the starting lineup, and then you stagger those two and keep one of them on the floor at all times for the rest of the game. Ideally, you close with those two, but I think we need to find out if they can play alongside each other. The Pistons drafted him 2 drafts ago with the top 5 pick. Clearly, he's not, I don't think he's at the stage of his career where he's a backup point guard for the rest of his career. There's still a lot to be figured out with Jaden in terms of the type of player. And ultimately, if it comes down to the fact that he is at his best with the ball in his hands, then I think there'll be a team that will see that and will make a reasonable offer. It may not be what Pistons fans want, but I think you need to see if him and Kate can play alongside each other. And that's why I would start them and play them like not as many minutes, but a fair chunk of minutes together, because Ivy is a player you're either going to invest in long term or you're going to look to move and help him. Well, and I assume he would want to find another opportunity, maybe a more appropriate setting for him to kind of grow as a point guard, as opposed to playing off the ball alongside Kate. So I still would like to think they work together. The question for them initially was defensively, is that ever going to work? But I think, first of all, you need to figure out if they can play together offensively and then the defense, because if they can play together offensively, I still really believe that's a dynamic backcourt, a backcourt that can give you 40 to 50 points every single night, as well as the assists, as well as kind of just the transition play between the two. Like, I really like it as a ceiling outcome, but yeah, last season there wasn't much to like in terms of Cade and Jaylen together. And the reason he's under the most pressure is because I feel like if he can't show any improvement playing alongside Cade, I kind of think that the writing will be on the wall next off season, the start of the following season, that the Pistons will be, and Jaylen will probably want a change of scenery. And that's why I have him number one. Like, in terms of the other players I did think of Tobias Harris, mainly from a fan standpoint, that if he's having a rough month shooting or that kind of thing, like, the Pistons will get clowned for that deal. But ultimately, I think it's a short-term contract. Malik Beasley, no, he's 1 year, $6 million. Fontecchio, no, that deal was awesome. And I'm just talking strictly players here. So Isaiah Stewart, no. These were kind of the main three. Marcus Sasser maybe, but I don't think his role is going to be important enough. Like, I don't have him in my rotation. So yeah. Asar Thompson, I still think he's only in his second season and is a very kind of a player that is still, it's kind of very unknown what outcome he's going to hit, because there's so much potential there. But I think, yeah, he's only going to his second season. That doesn't feel right to say there's a heap of pressure on him. So these are my top three. Love to know your top three. And if you could rank them in order, that'd be great. I'm sure some people disagree with me, but I had a bit of fun doing that. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And as always, until Friday, unless there's any breaking news, we'll be back then with another episode. But as always, go Pistons.